share with me what brought you to yoga, what brought you to Epic, and just share with me a little bit about the beginning of your yoga journey.
Okay. I think I want to talk about what brought me to Epic first, and then I'll circle back. But I had just moved to Nashville. I guess it's been 3 years ago now. I had moved to Nashville. I didn't really know anyone. I took a leap on faith moving here after going through a divorce and losing my job and just trying to figure out where I was supposed to be and what my place was in the world. I felt like I had lost value. And it was just a really dark period in my life. And I moved here and I actually found the condo online. Like, I really took a leap on faith. I moved here to this condo sight unseen. And one day I was driving and I had gone to Target and I looked up and I was like, wow, I didn't realize there was a yoga studio there. And I drove past it for about a week, just too afraid to walk in because I knew I wouldn't know anyone and it would be outside of my comfort zone. But I decided to go. And I don't know if you remember this, but I came to class and I was in the back and, I stuck close to the wall. I was trying to stay small and trying not to be seen. And I would come in and it felt like community. I mean, everyone was so loving and so kind and so welcoming, but I was so broken that it was hard for me to reach back to the hand that had been extended to me. And I would just come in, I would, practice. I sucked, but I would just practice. I would show up. And I remember I came to a class and I was in the very back and you switched it around and you started the class from the back. Do you remember that, Val? And suddenly I was in the front and I was terrified. And I was like, I want to just grab my things and leave. And I didn't. I stayed. And and that really shook things up for me. I was like, I don't have to play it small. I don't have to be afraid in this community of people who want to love me, who want to nurture me while I'm hurting. And I just allowed myself to open up slowly. And Epic became family to me. I mean, I would come in and I didn't always talk to people, but just being in that space, it was what I needed to heal. And it actually, it makes me tear up now thinking about it because how hurt I was and how broken I felt at that time, and to receive the love and the kindness from, you can hear my voice cracking, I get emotional about this, from the Epic community. And it was just a really beautiful thing. And slowly, through prayer, through meditation, through lots and lots of yoga, I rebuilt my life. And, people who don't believe in transformations, they're possible. And yoga is a practice that can transform one's life. I mean, I swear by it, really. It's amazing, the growth that I've seen in my own life just through the practice of yoga. So I have to circle back to how I came to yoga. There was a yoga studio. I moved here from Florida that was close to my home that I would go to. And that was my first entree into yoga. I loved it. I would go. But for me and for those classes, it was about exercise. It was about going and getting a workout and grabbing, my towel and my mat and my water bottle and leaving and feeling like, okay, yeah, I worked out, and going home to, the chaos of my life. I think through the practice, I know through the approach, through the JIP sequence and through the approach of our studio of Epic, yoga is more than just being twisty on the mat. It's about a lifestyle, and really living and breathing and just finding your being in that yogic process. I don't even know if that makes sense, but I feel it so strongly. Like, it's more than just, can I do this particular asana? No, maybe I can't, but can I try a little harder? Can I push myself a little bit more? And can I do that in my life when I'm afraid to do something? Can I just take that one little step, even if it's moving me beyond my comfort zone? And I think that that introduction that Epic gave me to, this is more than just exercise, this is a way of being, that in itself was the transformation. It made me look at things, and especially look at myself differently.
So taking yoga on the mat to off the mat, essentially.
Correct. Without a doubt. In every single aspect of my life. I think for myself, and I believe this is true for a lot of people, fear dictates our lives, and we don't recognize it. We think, we expect fear to show up like terror. Like, we know terror. We know that paralysis, like, if someone, whatever you're afraid of, if someone were to throw that at you, like, I'm afraid of snakes. If someone were to throw a snake at me, I know that terror. Or if someone were chasing me with, a chainsaw, that's terror. But fear is so seductive. It comes into our lives and we don't recognize it at first until we are paralyzed. And it's like, oh, wait, I'm afraid to try something new. I'm afraid to go to this place. I'm afraid to do whatever. I'm afraid to go back to school. I'm afraid to get this job. Whatever. We all go through this. I'm so afraid. And I think that was happening in my life. I was so afraid. I'd been hurt so much by life that I was afraid to move beyond this little cocoon that I created. And yoga helped me to recognize fear for what it is. And I was like, why am I feeding this? It's not even real. And it helped me see that, okay, maybe I am afraid, like if I really were to analyze my feelings, yeah, maybe I am afraid, but I'm going to do it anyway. I'm going to do it, and I'm going to see what happens. And every single time, it's not what I thought it was. And I talk a lot about my inability to do crow. It's like, I think everybody knows by now, like, I can't do crow, but I was so afraid to even attempt it because all I could see was myself in traction after twisting my neck and, family coming to visit me in the hospital and having to explain,
all the scenarios that go on our heads. Yeah.
But now, like, I attempt it every single time and I fall out of it every single time, and I don't really care. I'm not even afraid anymore. I'm just going to do it. And eventually one day I'm going to get it.
Yeah. Awesome.
One day.
And you will. That's so true. You're speaking faith over fear, essentially.
Exactly.
And that kind of segues into, and I totally love all the stuff that you're saying, because what you're speaking to is the inquiry part of the JIP. Yes. Like, you're asking questions, you're getting the inquiry. And so kind of followed that up with, how does your yoga practice, and does it coincide with your faith in general, and how does that look in your life on a day-to-day existence?
Thank you. It's interesting because I think in the beginning, maybe I shied away from really jumping into yoga because I was afraid that it was religious, or that it was, that it would be in opposition to my own spirituality. And I think a lot of people are afraid because they have this, this impression, this false impression of what yoga is. And I believe that my practice has strengthened my faith. And it has moved me from, let me share this quote. You've probably heard it before. People who are, I hope I can get it right. People who are afraid are super religious. I think people who are afraid of going to hell are super religious. That's it. People who are afraid of going to hell are super religious. People who have been to hell and back are spiritual. Mm-hmm. And that quote has really stuck with me because I think that with my own faith, I was very, very religious. I felt I had to do it this way. Everything was in a box that, this is what it had to be, and this is how it looked like. It was supposed to look like. And then as I began to practice, I began to see that my concept of God was so much bigger than what I initially thought. Mm-hmm. and it became more of a spiritual practice. Even now, as I'm practicing, when we do Exalted Warrior, you know, there's just something about being in that pose, and I think about myself in this whole great big world, and I get to exalt this thing that's bigger than I am, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And for me, that is a very spiritual practice, part of the practice that has enriched my faith. And it's also, you know, the day-to-day, like faith, the true word, you know, having a belief in something that's not yet seen. I've seen that through my practice as well, because part of faith is trust, that you trust that this is going to happen. And just even going back to Crow, you know, like I trust that one day it's going to happen, you know, and I don't have to try to micromanage it and like do this and do that to make it happen. I just have to be relaxed and be calm and stay in the flow, and eventually it's going to happen. And I think that has been the breakthrough for me with my faith, with my spirituality, with this practice, just trusting in this moment that I have what I need, and I'll get what I need next if I continue to show up and try.
That's awesome.